Good evening, I'm John Carter. Welcome to Poland Daily. Easter Monday, the second day of Easter, is traditionally a day off in Poland. Poles visit their families and go to church. The eyes of Roman Catholics around the world turn towards the Vatican and the Easter message from Pope Francis, who had this to say in his Holy Monday address to the faithful.
Today we implore fruits of peace upon the entire world, beginning with the beloved and long-suffering land of Syria, whose people are worn down by an apparently endless war. This Easter, may the light of the risen Christ illuminate the consciences of all political and military leaders, so that a swift end may be brought to the carnage in course, that humanitarian law may be respected, and that provisions be made to facilitate access to the aid so urgently needed by our brothers and sisters, while also ensuring fitting conditions for the return of the displaced.
Easter Monday, or as it's known in Poland, Wet Monday, is a day known for huge water fights taking place all over the country. Traditionally, it was a way for boys to show affection for specific girls they had a crush on, by dousing them in water, but nowadays it's more of a free-for-all war.
The tradition to engage in water fights on Wet Monday is rooted in ancient Slavic pagan customs. The festivity is also a symbol of winter finally coming to an end. The fertility of spring, symbolized by water, gave hope for a good harvest later in the year. The day, sometimes called Smigus Dingus, traditionally also included boys smacking girls on their legs with branches of pussy willow. The prospect of being spanked and drenched in water might sound terrifying to some modern woman, but in the past it was considered an honor, as it showed that a girl was popular with local boys and could count on getting married fairly quickly. With time, the tradition has evolved into a national water fight and a free-for-all war. Today, a variety of techniques and tools are employed in the festivities. Some people use vehicles and drive-by method in order to capitalize on the element of surprise. Others prey on passers-by from their windows and balconies. People are armed with buckets of water, water guns, bottles, and balloons. It is hard to guess where the water will be coming from. Also, it is not uncommon for the local fire brigade to get involved in these festivities, and naturally, they are capable of outgunning everyone. If you have any business in town on Wet Monday, leave your smartphone at home and put a raincoat on, although a raincoat will probably not be enough to protect yourself from a bucket full of water.
Today is the 13th anniversary of St. John Paul II's passing. His death in 2005 had a strong impact on the whole Catholic world. Karol Wojtyła is widely regarded as one of the greatest popes to have ever served as the Bishop of Rome. Despite the years that have passed, most adults in Poland still vividly remember the Polish Pope.
Habemus Papam!
After suffering from flu at the beginning of February 2005, John Paul II had been hospitalized for an extended period. A septic shock, among other issues, led to the deterioration of his health. As per his wishes, he spent his last days at his private residence, as he knew his time was coming. For 2 days, tens of thousands of people assembled and held a vigil in St. Peter's Square. Upon hearing of this, the dying Pope was said to have stated, "I have searched for you, and now you have come to me, and I thank you." Just hours before he fell into a coma, John Paul II spoke his final words in Polish, which translate, "Allow me to depart to the house of the Father." At 9:37 p.m. Central Eastern Time, Karol Wojtyła died of a heart failure, 46 days before his 85th birthday. The Requiem Mass held on April 8, 2005, was said to have set world records, both for attendance and number of heads of state present at the funeral, which included George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Inspired by calls of Santo Subito, "Make him a saint immediately," from the crowds gathered during the funeral mass that he performed, Benedict XVI began the beatification process for his predecessor, bypassing the normal restriction of 5 years that must pass after a person's death before beginning the beatification process. Exceptional circumstances have been cited, and the decision of waiving the waiting period was announced on May 13, 2005, the feast of Our Lady of Fatima and the 24th anniversary of the assassination attempt on John Paul II at St. Peter's Square. After the confirmation of miracles performed by the Pope, including curing Sister Mary Simon Pierre of Parkinson's disease, the Vatican announced on January 14, 2011, that John Paul II was to be beatified on May 1st. Almost 3 years later, on April 27, 2014, on Divine Mercy Sunday, just as when he had died, the Polish Pope was pronounced a saint, with over 500,000 people attending the Mass.
16,000 immigrants, mainly from Rwanda, Uganda, Eritrea and Somalia, who arrived in Israel in recent years, will be resettled in the West. The deal was reached by Israeli authorities and the United Nations Refugee Agency. The agency intends the so-called refugees to be relocated in Canada, Italy and Germany. However, there has been no word of agreement so far from those countries.
Refugees from poor, war-torn African countries came to Israel and demanded the right to stay. Israel estimates that between 35,000 and 40,000 of those people are economic migrants. Thus, the country had no obligation to grant them refugee status. The government considered deportation but bowed to pressure from American Jewish leaders and other groups, including Israeli doctors, academics, poets, Holocaust survivors, rabbis, and pilots, who accused the country of racism. The solution is to send the undocumented asylum seekers to Western countries. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who presented the solution, stressed that half of the asylum seekers will remain in Israel. Israeli diplomatic sources have underlined that this agreement is unprecedented, given that the United Nations are engaged in expelling asylum seekers from their current country of residence.
Following the success of the board game Scythe, Jakub Różalski, an independent Polish artist, is working on a new strategy game called Iron Harvest. To finance the development, he turned to Kickstarter and gathered the required funds, nearly $500,000 in just 36 hours.
Iron Harvest follows the Różalski vision of the 1920 war, where Poland defeated Soviet Russia, fought in an alternate world where infantry is supported by mechanical units. It is an alternate history based on the Battle of Warsaw in 1920, one of the last great cavalry battles in modern times. Różalski describes it as a period when tradition clashed with modernity, when the world was still full of mysteries and secrets, and mankind fascinated by engines, iron and steel, and began to experiment and try to build huge walking machines. The game's storyline involves a war being waged between three factions: the Saxon Empire, a powerful industrial country with a strong military tradition; the agricultural Polska Republic, that is trying to maintain its status and territory, struggling with its aggressive neighbors. Finally, is the aggressive Rushviet, huge, powerful, but tired and worn out by the long war. Whatever the winning strategy might be, the player will enjoy the picturesque Polish countryside, dotted with Polish insurgency fighters of 100-year-old history. All of this brought to life by Jakub Różalski's amazing artwork.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm John Carter. Poland Daily returns, same time tomorrow. Good night.